And so I built this company on the sole premise that I wanted people to cook at home, okay? One of the reasons why a lot of people don't actually enjoy cooking at home is because it's tedious. There's a lot of cleanup. There's a lot of pre-prep. There's all these things. You can get around that. If you learn these tips, these tricks, these little chef hacks, what ends up happening is you figure out, oh my goodness, that's like, it took a quarter of the cooking time off for me, right? And I think that's important throughout the entire process, is just to learn a quick way of doing it. So this is a really short course. All it's going to be devoted in is just ways of making dicing and chopping and knife skills a little bit easier, okay? First things first, let's talk about knives. I asked this last time, and one couple was unbelievably honest, which I really appreciate. Who here put your knives in the dishwasher? How do you clean your knives? No? No knives in the dishwasher? All right, fantastic. Brandy, put your hand down. You're embarrassing. So these amazing knives come from Montana Knife Company. The reason why I like these, and I'm not just up here trying to sell you a product, I'm telling you as a chef and somebody who has had a knife in his hand the majority of his life, the reason why I appreciate these products is that it feels like a constant piece of steel. You want good balance. You want something that feels nice and firm, and when you actually start to grip it, it actually is in a really good position to have a lot of dexterity when you start to cut, right? Now, if you go and you get a knife and it has a celebrity's name on it, that's great, that's fine by me. If you go and spend a $10 knife, okay. But what I would want you to do is I'd want you to go get quality. I want you to get something that'll take a long time until it's rendered useless. You sharpen it properly, you hone it properly. So what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna walk through the difference between sharpening and honing. So everybody knows pretty much how to sharpen a knife, right? But actually taking the honing steel and doing this to it, what you're doing is you're creating a blade that's true. You're creating a blade that's super straight. This will cut like a sharp blade. This is a diamond honing steel, and actually taking it and running it 15 degrees on both sides is not actually sharpening the knife at all, but rather it's giving it a very true blade. Without that, it will feel like a dull blade. This is a brand new knife. You're going to be hard pressed to find a new knife, especially with this quality that is actually going to be on the dull side. These are razor sharp. When you buy these, they are razor sharp. So sharpening is different, okay? Honing is what you should do every time before you start your task. So you have all your vegetables you're going to cut up for your stir fry, and going through and giving about 5 passes on each side. Really, really simple. Don't do this up here in the air. My dad, anytime he saw me doing this when I was young, he'd be like, "You looking for a girlfriend? Like, what are you doing?" Because I'd be up here like this. He's like, "Don't do that." So 5 or 6 passes on each side. Make sure your blade is nice and true. Never goes in the dishwasher, and always use a cutting board that will actually accept the blade. What I mean by that is you want a knife and you want a cutting board that kind of work together. If you're using a glass cutting board, people still have glass cutting boards. I'm in kitchens all the time and I see it. Glass cutting board will dull your knife quicker than you can imagine. Marble cutting boards, it's a thing. No marble, they're great for displaying your cheese tray, horrible on your knife. So what I want you to do is I want you to get a knife that actually accepts the blade a little bit. This is a bamboo knife from Camp Chef, a really good sturdy product. This never goes in water. This is just scrubbed off and nice and sanitized. The polyurethane white cutting boards are perfect for another type of cooking. So you want those because they will accept the knife exactly how you want them to, okay? So whenever I start cooking, I do something called mise en place. So mise en place means everything in its place. If you watch the Food Network or you watch any of those shows, you notice that everything is within arm's reach. If you were to watch a show where everything wasn't in arm's reach, the celebrity chef is going to sit there and take 45 minutes just gathering ingredients. Now, it seems like a tedious thing to do prior to cooking, but if you start with that practice, you'll realize that your cooking time is a lot shorter, and you're actually enjoying it because you're going through and adding the ingredients as they need to be in the recipe or off of your own head or however else you're doing it. So in these courses, I separate everything into hardware and into software. Hardware is going to be all the tools you need, and the software is going to be all the ingredients that you need for the recipe, okay? So my hardware is going to be obviously a really good cutting board. Like I said, this doesn't go in water. It will soak it like a sponge. Underneath, I actually have these silicone mats. Now, you can get these pretty much anywhere. This is the lining that you would have underneath your silverware drawer, right? Prevent it from sliding. It's about $4 or $5 for three feet of this. Take it, cut it into your squares. Keeps it nice and sturdy. Keeps these on your fingers, okay? Keeps these on your hands, rather, okay? Good quality knife, we talked about that. And then a vessel for everything to go in. So you don't need those little cups for your ingredients set around your cutting board. That looks really cute, but use things that are practical. If you do this extra stuff, it might look good. However, is it slowing down your cooking process, right? Is it slowing down the entire time you're cooking? And I would say it does. So find something. These are little deli containers. You can get these at restaurant supply stores. And I'm going to tell you another thing. You can go and you can get good quality stuff at those stores. I want you to go buy Camp Chef. I want you to go visit these guys over at Montana Knife Company. But anything that they might not sell, you can get at a restaurant supply store, and you're actually going to be spending a lot less on it. And this is what the pros use. So use that equation when you start looking for kitchen equipment, okay? So I have my mise en place. I have everything around. So this course is really just to kind of give you a couple of like, oh, I didn't know you could cut it that way. Or, oh, that made it really easy kind of thing. So first thing we're going to do is an onion. Now, I was asked earlier, does anybody know how to cut onions so you don't cry? Anybody? Exactly. There is no possible way you could do it. So what ends up happening is between every cell of this onion is mostly water. And there's sulfur and a bunch of other enzymes that are separated by these cells of water. The moment that you cut them, they start to mix because they're water soluble into the water, and they become essentially almost like a hydrocarbon. They actually a vapor lifts out of them and will start to burn you can see the moisture that's leaking out of it right now. So there's really nothing you can do. Some people say, oh, I put my knife in the freezer. What? Or I keep a spoon near me, or, I do a dance. I don't know. There's some crazy stuff out there. Really, there's not much you can do about it, okay? So what I've done is I've actually taken off the root side. A lot of people keep it intact because a lot of that concentrated sulfur is going to be in the root. I work pretty quickly, so that doesn't bother me much at all. When I'm cooking, what I want is a flat surface. And everything I do, I want a flat surface because this is a lot harder to chop than this. Okay? So what I'll do is, now that I've taken both ends off, this is the part where you get your onion chives. This is the part where the root goes down. So if we were looking at it just right below the surface of the soil, that's what we'd be looking at. So then, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, but it's a good refresher. And especially for those who don't, I think it's a game changer as far as learning how to properly chop an onion. We have that screen over there for you to look at. I'm going to peel this really quickly. Every time I'm done with anything on my cutting board, I take it, I clean it up. I teach culinary for a living, and I tell everybody, this is your real estate. This is where your mind is at. Don't have anything on here that you're not going to use, okay? Whatever is your task, it's right in front of you. So I have these two sides, and what I want to do is I want to free up different size dice. I can do a small dice, I can do like a brunoise, or I can do a large dice. Depending on the application that you are actually doing will depend on the dice, right? If you're doing a stir fry, then you want that maybe a larger dice. If you're doing maybe something in a sauce and you want it to start to melt in the pan a little bit, because there is a good amount of sugar in there, you start with a smaller dice. If you're doing fajitas, right? I'm from Texas. We live and breathe fajitas. You're going to do what's called a julienne. I'll do that on this other one. Okay, so back to what we're doing here. I'm going to do a medium dice, and I'm doing this pretty slow, but what I'm actually doing is I'm running the knife about 3/4 of the way through. But you can also see that it's all still one piece. All the petals are still connected to each other. So I've gone in one direction like that. Now that I've made these individual cuts and I've separated them like that, but they're still together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do about 3 angles and not touch the cutting board. A lot of knife skills come from your dexterity of learning how to use the knife, but also resistance. Our last course just a second ago was all about butchering. That resistance against the knife of knowing, okay, that is flesh, Okay, that right there is going to be some ligament, and that right there is going to be a bone. It sounds elementary, but if you can sit there and feel a knife and see how it cuts, you'll all of a sudden realize, oh, I don't have to push so hard right here. Let the knife do the work, okay? So I've made those 3 cuts. You can tell right here, it's still actually in one piece, right? So I've done an equal amount of cuts across, and then I've actually done 3 slices above, and this is what we're left with. Now, all I'm gonna do is go through and free it up. So why is this important? Why is it important that we actually have cuts that are all the same size? It cooks evenly, right? If you were to come over to my house before I started really learning how to cook, I mean, I was, 17, and you were to hang out and I were to make you like a potato hash, there would be like tiny little potatoes and big potatoes, because I hadn't understood that it takes time and it takes patience to actually get there. Chopping up food the way you think it needs to be doesn't always result in that and what you think and what will actually happen, rather. Okay, so then I have one for my ready to go, and then I have one for my trim. This will go to my chickens if I was at the house, or it goes in the compost, right? And then for this, everybody's seen the claw technique, right? Is anybody here trying to master it? Has anybody tried? Yeah, a little bit. So the reason why the claw works is that you constantly have the blade up against your knuckle. It never goes above the top part of your knuckle. This is the danger zone, okay? Here you're good. Here you're Kenny Loggins. Here you're good. Kenny Loggins. No? Not funny? Okay. So he wrote, "Welcome to the danger zone." So never mind. Okay, anyways. So what I'm going to do is just make equal cuts, and I can sit here and I can look away and slice, and when I'm slicing, what I'm doing is I'm never raising above that knuckle. So I use it as a guide, and then I just simply use my thumb to stabilize it. This is your julienne, so this is good for your stir fry. That right there is perfect for your fajitas if you're going to do that. What it's going to be used for is it's going to go right into our sausage grind for our 2 o'clock class today. So great, really, really simple, okay? Next up, this is the one I love doing because I get all the, oh, wow, ooh. That's amazing, Josh, my goodness. Did you just ruin it for me? Yes, you did. The center part of this bell pepper has the spines, so this is obviously part of the berry family. This is closer to a strawberry than it is corn or anything else. So there's going to be these veins that run along this area, and so these veins actually are inedible if you've ever eaten a lot of these bell peppers when they're fresh. Your stomach doesn't always feel 100% great afterwards because you're producing more stomach acid to actually break down all of the fiber that's within those spines. So what we want to do is we have different ways we can take care of this. One, we can cut down the petals like this and kind of just go right around them. This works great. I want to use every bit, especially now as expensive as everything is. I want to take every bit I can, right? And what I do is I just look at these petals, and each one of these, I want to release it. So that's one technique. The other technique is actually to lay it on its side, and you want to take the knife and bring it to about halfway through, and then just simply rotate the blade. I like this one because then I don't have to worry about the spines at all. Oh, a little bit. I take that back. Magic, thank you. So once I'm done, I can free up, and then again, just rotating that knife around the bell pepper and letting the knife do the work. The knife really does not leave too high off of the cutting board. You're just going to let the knife do the work and rotate it around. A sharp knife produces this. You're not going to get this with your super dull, I just pulled it out of the dishwasher knife, okay? Keep cleaning my board as I go. Again, it sounds elementary. However, if you get into that mindset of every single time you're done doing a task, you clean up after you go. Every single time you do anything, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to kind of pick this up. It'll become a practice. And later on, you're like, I'm not spending a whole hour cleaning the kitchen after I did all this. But then afterwards, we can go back through and we can actually make our knife cuts. We can turn this into a medium dice, just like that. If we want to go into our fajita veggies, just like we did earlier, we want to make sure that the bell peppers and onions, they pretty much cook right around the same time, right? So you can actually do the same large kind of juliennes like that. Okay, garlic. Who here loves garlic? Yeah. So the thing about garlic is this, is that just like onions, because it actually is part of the onion family, is that there's all these different flavors. There's enzymes that are not bound by water but separated by water. If we were to look at it under a microscope, you would see that there was a flavor that was more like a sharp onion, right, or more kind of like a raw onion. Another flavor that would be right next to it, which would be another enzyme, would be closer to horseradish. If you've ever taken fresh garlic and thrown it in your mouth, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, you will notice that it's spicy. It has that horseradish kick to it. When you cut and you start to chop up your garlic, what you end up doing is you're marrying those two flavors. Because the water is there, they're water soluble and they create their own flavor. Now, the question is this: what are you going to use the garlic for? Are you going to use it for a stir fry? Are you going to use it for a marinade? Maybe you're just going to make a real quick sauce with it. What you actually want to do first is take that husk straight off there, just like so. And so the moment that I actually crush the garlic, all the science does the work for me. It's going to start taking those enzymes and building them together using the water and the oil that's inside that bulb to do all the work, okay? So I can go through and I can start to chop. The moment I chop, it does even more. I go back through, I chop some more. Now, if I want a good sharp garlic flavor, if I like that snap of that spiciness that we talked about earlier, then what I would do is I would use this right away. Okay? Because still those enzymes are still marrying with the water and the oil, and so you'll get more of that sharpness, okay? If I want more of a well-rounded garlic flavor to where it kind of like it lingers even after, we call that an aromatic. It lingers kind of on the tongue and you can still taste it a little while longer, then you want to chop it and leave it on the cutting board for 3 or 4 minutes. Okay? Another thing you can do is put a little bit of kosher salt. So kosher salt, what that's going to do is it's going to help through osmosis release all that oil and essentially purge it out of the garlic itself. So then what I would do is, let's say I put a little bit of garlic salt on this, or just regular kosher salt is the best thing for it. I turn the knife away from me, and then I use the blade of the knife to mash up the garlic. And the great thing is if you use kosher salt, what ends up happening is the kosher salt is nice and sharp. You know what I'm talking about, right? And so what you'll do is when you start chopping through and doing all your work, when you go through and start crushing it, the kosher salt is using that sharpness to not only through osmosis pull out that oil, but it also helps kind of break those cell walls while you're doing that. The thing you have to remember is that you added salt to it. So remember that when you go and follow the rest of your recipe and keep cooking, okay? Great. Ginger. Who cooks with ginger at home? Yeah. So this is in our house constantly. Ginger is a rhizome, and it grows right below the surface. Rhizome means that it actually has two main structures, and so what you will see is that a lot of the work is done, and it's not really a root system. It is considered a rhizome. So I've seen a lot of people who actually will sit there and peel it. They'll use a knife. Best thing is a spoon. Has anybody seen this trick before? Yes. You want to take over this class? Come over here and take it. I'm just kidding. So the reason why I like the spoon is I'll cut it into smaller segments, and then like I'm whittling, I'll just scrape the outside of the ginger. Now the skin comes off really, really easily. Now the reason why I don't use a peeler is because I'll have these little nooks and crannies. The peeler doesn't have this curvature in it, so I can't really get into those areas, and just like that I can just cut it right up. Just like we were talking, if you were in our last course in butchering, you have muscle grain, right? You want to cut against the grain. Cutting with the grain is going to actually cause it to be kind of stringy, right? And you're going to fight it. Ginger's the same thing. When you come up to what you're going to use for ginger, I love Thai and Laotian and Southeast Asian cooking. That's like what I go to besides German. And they will use these like really thinly sliced medallions and like tom kha gai, or you'll see any type of sauce and they love these little bites of it, right? But here in the States, we kind of like the aromatic of garlic. We don't want to, or ginger rather. You don't want to bite down on top of it. So again, like I said, cutting against the grain will give you, it won't give you this fiber that you want. You want those fibers to be as really as small as possible, right?